it is absolutely possible to get enough calcium without dairy products. In fact, we talked about the Paleolithic era. Back then, people averaged about 1,000 milligrams of calcium a day without a single drop of dairy. And so we can do it, but it can be tricky. So because, if you think about the amount of calcium in plant foods, they're not as concentrated. A cup of milk has 300 milligrams. A cup of broccoli, maybe 60 or 62 or something like that milligrams. But there are leafy green vegetables, if they're low in oxalates. There are a lot of high oxalate greens that do contain a lot of calcium, like spinach and beet greens and Swiss chard. But we don't absorb much of the calcium from those foods. We only absorb about 5%. So we need the low oxalate leafy greens like kale and bok choy and sui choy and some of these kinds of turnip greens and broccoli, and these are all pretty good sources. But almonds, chia seeds, tahini, chia seeds are actually really high in calcium. Blackstrap molasses, 1 tablespoon provides about 100 milligrams of calcium, which is quite shocking to people. So if you're making cookies or balls or muffins using blackstrap molasses instead of some other sweetener, when I was little, I loved to dip toast in blackstrap molasses. So blackstrap molasses is probably the only sugar that is actually really nutrient dense. So a couple of tablespoons will provide about, the same amount of calcium as a cup of milk, and probably about the same amount of iron as an 8-ounce steak. So it's really quite surprising. But then the other foods that can really help for parents to get the calcium intakes up to, recommended would be calcium fortified foods like fortified non-dairy milks or tofu that has calcium, that's made with calcium sulfate or, something like that. So those are really good ways of doing that. Now, it's important to recognize that there's different bioavailability of calcium from different foods. Children actually, when you're young, you tend to absorb more calcium than when you're an adult. It increases in pregnancy, but children absorb way more calcium than adults do. So that's a bonus. But the calcium in milk is about 32% bioavailable, and there are different numbers in different papers, but it's about 32%. In low oxalate greens, it's closer to 50%. So, broccoli, 48, bok choy and kale around 50, 52. So when you think about, there's a little extra absorption from those foods. And also, if you, let's say you need 1,000 milligrams of calcium, you eat it all in one meal, you'll absorb way less than if you spread it out during the day. So certainly you get a little bit from beans, especially white beans and black beans. So you'll get a little bit from that. You'll get a little bit from, so many of the things you're consuming throughout the day that total absorption will end up being reasonably good. Now, some things reduce absorption, like sodium reduces absorption or increases excretion, really. And so we just need to be, high acid load can be an issue as well. But generally, plant-based diets are fairly conducive to reasonable absorption. Now, we do need to recognize, though, so, you're going to get about 96 milligrams of calcium from a cup of cow's milk. To get that amount from broccoli, you'd have to eat 3 cups of cooked broccoli. Kids are not going to eat 3 cups of cooked broccoli. So it can be really helpful for children to have a little bit of fortified non-dairy milk in the mix. And the RDA, just so people know, for a toddler, it's about 700 milligrams. For children who are 4 to 8 years of age, it's 1,000. And for 9 years of age into the teen years, it's 1,300. Now, it's worth knowing that the RDA is lower in some other countries. So, for example, in the UK, the RDA for 4 to 8-year-olds, it's 1,000 here. In North America, it's 450 to 550, or half the North American RDA. So there's still not complete agreement on, how much calcium humans actually need. And it depends on your lifestyle, all sorts of things impact your calcium requirements. But if you are trying to achieve the RDA in North America, it makes it so much easier if you include some non-dairy, fortified non-dairy beverage, some tofu with added calcium. And the calcium in tofu is generally about 40 to 50% bioavailable. So again, it's a very high bioavailability. And in soy milk or other non-dairy milks, the fortification level is about the same as what you would see. The calcium would be about the same as what you would see in cow's milk. And the availability is similar absorption. But we should know that there's some evidence that vegan children could have lower bone density than non-vegan. And vegans do tend to have higher risk of fractures, probably because we have lower BMIs, we have less overweight, we consume a little less calcium, a little less vitamin D, a little less protein. All of those things could factor in. But again, as I mentioned, we need to remember that we lived without dairy for an awful lot of centuries. And so it really is absolutely possible to get enough calcium without dairy products.